The calm before the storm. The stars in the galaxy shined bright, each one a reminder of the many civilizations spread across the vast expanse of space. The Galactic Council ruled over all, a collection of powerful species who had long seen themselves as the galaxy's rightful leaders. To them, humanity was nothing more than a tiny speck on the map. Earth had been isolated, forgotten by most, and ignored by those who ruled with arrogance. For centuries, humanity had lived in peace, quietly observing the galaxy's events from the sidelines. They were not a threat. They were not even considered worthy of attention. Humans were too young, too small, and far too weak compared to the great empires of the galaxy. The Council believed that any attempt to challenge their power would be futile, something to laugh at. But what the galaxy didn't realize was that humanity was watching, learning, and adapting. They had been underestimated for too long. They weren't just going to sit back and accept their position. Deep within the heart of Earth, in hidden rooms where the stars couldn't see, humanity was preparing. It started small. Tiny efforts that would not have caught the attention of any alien species. A few scientists, a handful of engineers, and dreamers working on technologies that had once been thought impossible. These efforts went unnoticed. The galaxy continued its endless march of dominance, dismissing humanity as little more than a nuisance. But the time of peace was coming to an end. There were whispers, small rumors among the stars. Some began to notice the humans were getting stronger, smarter. But by the time these whispers reached the Galactic Council, it was far too late to act. The first signs of trouble came from an unlikely source, a small military outpost on the far edge of human space. The outpost had been abandoned by most, but its importance had not been fully realized. The humans had set up a simple communication station, one that was capable of sending signals across vast distances, but nothing special. Or so the galaxy thought. They couldn't have been more wrong. On one quiet evening, an unassuming message was sent to the far reaches of the galaxy. It wasn't a declaration of war. It wasn't an attempt at diplomacy. It was a simple message, carrying no more than a few words, but those words had weight. They sent a ripple through the galaxy, shaking those who heard them. "We are coming." No one knew what it meant. No one understood. It was just a message. But the ones who heard it couldn't ignore it. It was as if something was stirring, a storm on the horizon, a force that had remained silent for far too long. The galaxy's most powerful species turned their eyes to Earth, the source of the mysterious signal, and they began to feel uneasy. On Earth, nothing had changed on the surface. People went about their daily lives, unaware of the tension growing just beyond the stars. The message was sent, and with it, humanity's destiny began to shift. There was a quiet gathering of minds, a group of human leaders who understood the message for what it truly was. The time had come. The galaxy would no longer be allowed to dismiss them. The first steps had been taken, and they would not stop now. But even as humanity began to prepare for what was to come, the Council was still in disbelief. The galaxy's leaders laughed at the idea of humans posing a real threat. They were too weak, too divided, and too far behind. It was impossible to them. But they had underestimated the strength of human resolve. They had underestimated the potential of a species that had survived against the odds time and time again. The galaxy's peace was fragile, and one single message had disturbed it. The storm was coming. The calm before the storm. The stars in the galaxy shined bright, each one a reminder of the many civilizations spread across the vast expanse of space. The Galactic Council ruled over all, a collection of powerful species who had long seen themselves as the galaxy's rightful leaders. To them, humanity was nothing more than a tiny speck on the map. Earth had been isolated, forgotten by most, and ignored by those who ruled with arrogance. For centuries, humanity had lived in peace, quietly observing the galaxy's events from the sidelines. They were not a threat. They were not even considered worthy of attention. Humans were too young, too small, and far too weak compared to the great empires of the galaxy. The council believed that any attempt to challenge their power would be futile, something to laugh at. But what the galaxy didn't realize was that humanity was watching, learning, and adapting. They had been underestimated for too long. They weren't just going to sit back and accept their position. Deep within the heart of Earth, in hidden rooms where the stars couldn't see, humanity was preparing. It started small. Tiny efforts that would not have caught the attention of any alien species. A few scientists, a handful of engineers, and dreamers working on technologies that had once been thought impossible. These efforts went unnoticed. The galaxy continued its endless march of dominance, dismissing humanity as little more than a nuisance. But the time of peace was coming to an end. There were whispers, small rumors among the stars. Some began to notice the humans were getting stronger, smarter. But by the time these whispers reached the Galactic Council, it was far too late to act. The first signs of trouble came from an unlikely source, a small military outpost on the far edge of human space. The outpost had been abandoned by most, but its importance had not been fully realized. The humans had set up a simple communication station, one that was capable of sending signals across vast distances, but nothing special. Or so the galaxy thought. They couldn't have been more wrong. On one quiet evening, an unassuming message was sent to the far reaches of the galaxy. It wasn't a declaration of war. It wasn't an attempt at diplomacy. It was a simple message, carrying no more than a few words, but those words had weight. They sent a ripple through the galaxy, shaking those who heard them. "We are coming." No one knew what it meant. No one understood. It was just a message. But the ones who heard it couldn't ignore it. It was as if something was stirring, a storm on the horizon, a force that had remained silent for far too long. The galaxy's most powerful species turned their eyes to Earth, the source of the mysterious signal, and they began to feel uneasy. On Earth, nothing had changed on the surface. People went about their daily lives, unaware of the tension growing just beyond the stars. The message was sent, and with it, humanity's destiny began to shift. There was a quiet gathering of minds, a group of human leaders who understood the message for what it truly was. The time had come. The galaxy would no longer be allowed to dismiss them. The first steps had been taken, and they would not stop now. But even as humanity began to prepare for what was to come, the Council was still in disbelief. The galaxy's leaders laughed at the idea of humans posing a real threat. They were too weak, too divided, and too far behind. It was impossible to them. But they had underestimated the strength of human resolve. They had underestimated the potential of a species that had survived against the odds time and time again. The galaxy's peace was fragile, and one single message had disturbed it. The storm was coming, the stirring of the giants. Across the galaxy, the message "we are coming" echoed in the silence of space. It wasn't loud, but it carried weight, a quiet force that reverberated through the minds of those who heard it. It was unlike anything anyone had anticipated. For weeks, the Galactic Council remained in denial, writing it off as an isolated incident. But the strange feeling growing in their minds was undeniable. Something was changing. The first to take notice were the Varnuk, a species known for their fierce battle tactics and ancient traditions. They had been part of the Galactic Council for centuries, trusted allies in many wars and conflicts. But now, as they read the message, they began to wonder, what if this wasn't just a message? What if humanity had something more up its sleeve than anyone realized? "I can't trust it," General Zalmax, the Varnuk military leader, grumbled to his advisors. His eyes scanned the communication that had been intercepted. "This isn't just a message, it's a warning." "Of what?" one of his officers asked, puzzled. "It's just a simple statement." Zalmax's sharp gaze locked onto the officer. "Have you forgotten who the humans are? They have a history of defying the odds, and we've underestimated them for too long." Meanwhile, back on Earth, the leadership of humanity was deep in preparation. Their military was small compared to the rest of the galaxy, but their resolve was unmatched. They had already learned the art of survival through years of fighting wars, surviving disasters, and rebuilding. If there was one thing humanity knew, it was how to adapt. A small team of scientists, engineers, and military strategists gathered in a high-security underground facility. They knew that humanity's time had come. They would no longer be passive observers of galactic events. They had the technology, the skills, and the willpower to stand their ground. But the challenge was massive. The Council had the resources, the powerful fleets, and the experience. Could humanity, in its raw determination, truly make a difference? The answer, they decided, lay in one simple strategy. Surprise. Humanity would strike fast, strike hard, and make the galaxy fear them. For months, the quiet preparation continued, unnoticed by the galaxy at large. Earth's most advanced ships were being built in secret, weapons designed to be far beyond anything the Council had ever seen. They weren't just creating new technology. They were adapting existing systems, improving them to the point of brilliance. The humans weren't just building for a fight. They were building for a revolution. But as the days passed, the message grew louder in the minds of the Council. More and more species began to feel uneasy. The Varnock were the first to send a request for a meeting with the Council. They demanded answers about the humans, wanting to know if the message was truly harmless or if there was something deeper behind it. The Council's response was slow, dismissive at first. But as they received more reports of strange activity in human space, ships moving in secret, unexpected military drills, they began to reconsider. Slowly but surely they realized that they had misjudged humanity. They had laughed at Earth's potential for far too long. And now, the galaxy was waking up to the reality that humanity was not a simple species. They were far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. The Varnock weren't the only ones growing suspicious. The Shora, a race of technologically advanced beings who had long controlled the galaxy's trade routes, began to wonder what humanity might be preparing. The Shora had always prided themselves on their sharp business acumen, but now they could sense that something was changing in the balance of power. Something was shifting, and the humans were at the center of it. The Council could no longer ignore the signs. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human ships moving across star systems, strange weapons being tested on remote worlds. The humans were preparing. And they weren't preparing to simply survive. They were preparing for war. But what kind of war would they wage? The galaxy had never seen a force like humanity's Dithworlders. These were humans who had adapted to the harshest environments, learned to thrive in conditions that would have wiped out any other species. To the Deathworlders, there was no such thing as an insurmountable challenge. The harshest climates, the most dangerous creatures, the deadliest of foes, they had all been conquered. Now, humanity was ready to take those same lessons into the stars. The leaders of the galaxy gathered, and for the first time, they truly feared what humanity might do. The tide turns, humanity's fury unleashed. The Galactic Council had never faced an enemy quite like this. In the days following humanity's arrival, the Council was in disarray. Their best strategists could not fathom how a species so young, so unrefined, could bring such chaos to their doorstep. Humanity, with their raw and unpolished power, had somehow broken through their most advanced defenses and made their presence felt in every corner of the galaxy. Captain Elijah Walker stood on the bridge of Horizon, staring at the swirling mass of stars. His hands were steady as he gave his orders. His crew, trained for this moment, executed them without hesitation. They were ready for anything. They had been preparing for this day their entire lives. "It's time," Captain Walker said, his voice cutting through the tension that had settled over the crew. "Open the comms." The channel crackled to life, and a deep silence followed. The entire fleet of humanity had been waiting for this moment. They were in position, at the heart of the Council's defenses, ready to take whatever the galaxy would throw at them. Galactic Council. Walker's voice resonated through the cosmos, a calm, steady voice in the face of uncertainty. "This is Captain Elijah Walker of the United Earth Fleet. We've arrived." The message was blunt, to the point. It wasn't a declaration of war, but it carried the weight of something far more dangerous. A species that had no intention of waiting for permission. The Council, meanwhile, scrambled to respond. Their most advanced warships, the Varnock battleships, were already moving into position, their engines lighting up like burning suns. The Shora's fleet, with its overwhelming firepower, began to form a defensive perimeter around the most important trade routes. The Xalan, the pacifist species who had long been observers of the galaxy's conflicts, began to mobilize their ships as well. It was clear. The galaxy was on the brink of war. But as humanity's ships made their way into the Council's space, a sense of dread began to spread. The Varnock, for all their might, were not prepared for what was about to happen. The Shora, who had prided themselves on their advanced technology, began to realize that the humans were not like any enemy they had faced before. The humans weren't following any of the rules the galaxy had long adhered to. Their ships didn't move like the Council's. Their tactics weren't predictable. They didn't negotiate. They didn't make demands. They acted. "Open fire." Captain Walker's voice rang out over the comms as the human fleet surged forward. The sky was ablaze with light as the first volley of fire was exchanged. The sound of the explosions reverberated through space, echoing like thunder in the emptiness. The human ships, designed with simplicity in mind, proved to be more deadly than the most advanced ships in the galaxy. Their weapons were crude, yet devastating. Their strategies were unconventional, often throwing the Varnock into disarray as they tried to adapt to the humans' unexpected methods. The Shora, with their calm, calculated strategies, struggled to keep up with the chaotic brilliance of humanity's attack. It wasn't long before the Council realized that they were losing. Despite their advanced technology, their well-guarded fleets were no match for humanity's sheer unpredictability. The Varnock, once thought to be the greatest military force in the galaxy, were struggling to maintain their ground. The Shora's fleets, renowned for their elegance and control, were being torn apart by humanity's relentless assault. But it wasn't just the firepower that was unsettling. It was the unwavering focus of humanity's warriors. The Dithworlders, the soldiers who had survived the harshest conditions on their home planet, were now leading the charge. They fought with a savagery that the galaxy had never witnessed before. There was no mercy, no hesitation. They were a force that would not stop until they had achieved their goal, and they would stop at nothing to see it through. The first major battle in the heart of the galaxy was over. Humanity had struck a blow against the Council, and for the first time in centuries, the balance of power was shifting. The galactic leaders were shaken, their confidence shattered. "Report," Walker said, his voice calm despite the chaos unfolding. "The Varnock fleet is retreating, sir," came the response. "The Shora are attempting to regroup, but they are overwhelmed. The Xalan are holding back, but it's clear they are not willing to face us directly." The tide was turning. Humanity had proven, in one bold strike, that they were a force to be reckoned with. The spark that ignited the war. The day came, as it always does, when the storm finally broke. It was just another routine report, or so the Galactic Council thought. The Varnock, in their usual way, had sent an update on the state of their borders, the patrols, and the growing concern about humanity's recent movements. They had barely given it a second thought, dismissing it as yet another anxious plea from a species whose nerves were as frayed as their history. But this time, something was different. A lone message appeared in the Council's communication hub, short, direct, and chilling. It had no sender, no encryption, nothing. Just the words, "We are here." The Council chamber fell into a stunned silence as the message hung in the air. Every member of the Council, from the Shora to the Varnock, and even the peaceful, meditative Talon, understood one thing immediately. This wasn't a message of diplomacy. It was a declaration. Humanity was no longer just a voice in the galaxy. They were stepping into the fray. The Council rushed to action. The galactic fleet was mobilized, orders sent out, and commanders scrambled to make sense of what this meant. But even as they moved, they were slow, hesitant. They knew that humanity, no matter how small, was unpredictable. What was clear was that the galaxy had underestimated them. But what was humanity's next move? On Earth, a storm was brewing too. Humanity's fleet, far from the prying eyes of galactic surveillance, was now fully assembled. The ships were sleek, efficient, and unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were powered by cutting-edge technology, but more importantly, they were designed to reflect the raw will of the humans who had created them. Humanity had created its fleet with a single goal in mind: to prove that they would not be pushed around. No one could ignore them anymore. Captain Elijah Walker stood in the command center of the flagship Horizon, looking out over the vast expanse of space as the final orders were given. The time had come. He wasn't afraid of what lay ahead. He had fought in wars on his homeworld. But this was different. This wasn't just a battle for Earth. This was a battle for respect, one that would echo across the stars. "I want everyone on alert," Walker barked, his voice calm but filled with an iron determination. "We're not just sending a message. We're sending a storm." With the flick of a switch, the command was given. All across Earth, from its underground military bases to its space stations, the human fleet powered up. The ships, some of the most advanced ever built, roared to life, their engines spitting out streams of light as they entered warp speed. As they set course toward the heart of the galaxy, the Council remained in shock. They knew humanity was coming, but they had no idea how quickly they would be upon them. The first human ships entered the galactic trade routes, and before the Council could react, they were already in position, ready to strike. A series of cryptic messages started pouring in from Earth's military fleet. These were not just military calls to arms, but strange, almost playful taunts that filled the comms with one clear message: "We are coming, and we will not back down." The Council had no time to organize their response. It wasn't just that humanity had launched its ships. They had caught the Council off guard in every way. The humans didn't wait for an invitation, nor did they make grand speeches about their intentions. Instead, they simply arrived, forcefully, relentlessly. The galaxy would soon see what humanity's Deathworlders were capable of. As the first human ships entered the Council's heavily guarded space, all eyes turned to the fleet's commander, Captain Walker. What would humanity's first move be? The galaxy was waiting, holding its breath, wondering whether this would be the beginning of a new war or the end of an old peace. The Shora, with all their advanced technology, couldn't predict the chaos that was about to unfold. The Varnok, who had fought countless wars in their time, were already bracing for the worst. Every species in the Council knew something had changed. Humanity's actions had set a new course, and no one knew how the galaxy would look when it was over. In the vast reaches of space, humanity stood at the edge of something monumental, and as the first shots rang out from the human ships, the galaxy was forever changed. But the Council wasn't ready to admit defeat just yet. They may have lost the first battle, but they would not lose the war. As the survivors of the Council fleets scrambled to regroup, they knew one thing for certain: humanity had ignited a war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. In the distance, the human ships gathered, preparing for the next battle. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. The humans had shown their strength, but the full scale of their power had yet to be unleashed. And as the fleet moved forward, the Council braced for the inevitable: more chaos, more destruction, and more fear. The war had only just begun. Humanity's relentless advance. No retreat, no mercy. The tide of war was shifting faster than anyone could have anticipated. Humanity had made its move, and the galaxy was now forced to reckon with a force they had underestimated. The Galactic Council had never faced such an unpredictable enemy. No strategy they had could contain the storm that was now unleashed upon them. Captain Elijah Walker stood once again at the helm of Horizon, his eyes fixed on the holographic displays before him. The coordinates for their next objective blinked in the corner of his screen. His mission was simple: keep pushing forward. Humanity had never retreated, and they weren't about to start now. They were in the fight for the long haul, and there would be no turning back. "Are we ready?" Walker asked his crew, his voice steady, but filled with the weight of responsibility. He knew that what they were doing wasn't just about winning a battle. It was about sending a message to the galaxy. A message that humanity would not be subdued. That humanity would not cower before the powers that had long controlled the fate of the stars. "Yes, Captain," his communications officer replied, looking up from the screen with a steady gaze. "The fleet is primed for the next strike." "Then let's move out," Walker said firmly. His voice was the anchor in the storm, and his crew responded with military precision. In moments, the human fleet, its ships moving as one, was once again on the move, cutting through space like a blade through flesh. Ahead of them lay the Zilmar sector, a highly strategic region of the galaxy where the Council's remaining forces were massing to make a stand. The Zilmar fleet had once been considered unbeatable, its forces larger than anything humanity had ever faced. But they had no idea what they were in for. The human fleet was not just larger, it was relentless. And as their engines roared to life, it was clear that there would be no escape for the Council. The first shots were fired as humanity's ships tore through the darkness of space. The Zilmar fleet, now realizing the full extent of humanity's power, scrambled to respond, but it was already too late. The human fleet had already engaged. The enemy ships were no match for the human fleet's speed, precision, and sheer ferocity. The battle unfolded in real time, holographic displays showing every movement, every volley of fire, every retreat. Zilmar ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, their hulls ripped apart by the unrelenting barrage from humanity's ships. Even the Zilmar's advanced defensive shields couldn't withstand the fury of the human weapons, which were designed for brutality. But it wasn't just the ships that made the difference. It was the soldiers, Deathworlders. Humans who had come from the harshest environments in the universe were the vanguard of this assault. They were the ones who led the charge, boarding enemy ships, engaging in brutal hand-to-hand combat, and overwhelming their foes with a ferocity the Zilmar had never imagined. As one Zilmar ship fell, another quickly followed. Each one was a testament to humanity's determination. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their place in the galaxy. Every blast, every strike, was a message. Humanity would not be stopped. "Enemy lines are crumbling, Captain," the tactical officer reported. "The Zilmar are retreating. They're panicking." Walker stood tall, his gaze cold and focused. He had fought in many battles before, but this was different. This wasn't just about military strategy or tactics. This was about asserting humanity's place among the stars. He could feel the weight of history bearing down on him. If humanity succeeded here, they would no longer be a mere footnote in the galaxy's history. They would be the ones to shape it. "Keep pushing them back. We don't stop until they're gone," Walker ordered. The Zilmar were in full retreat now, their ships scattering like prey before a predator. The human fleet, undeterred, kept pressing on, striking as one, moving with the precision of a singular entity. No hesitation, no mercy. Humanity's Deathworlders led the way, tearing through the Zilmar's defenses, breaking down their walls, and leaving them scrambling for survival. The Galactic Council had no idea what they were dealing with. Their fleets had been routed. Their strongest allies had fallen. The galaxy's power structure was beginning to crumble, and humanity was at the forefront of this new era. As Walker stood at the helm, he couldn't help but think of the words his grandfather had once told him. "The galaxy is a dangerous place, but sometimes all it takes is one person to make a difference." And that difference had arrived in the form of humanity. The galaxy trembles. Humanity's fury unleashed. The shockwave of humanity's victory continued to reverberate across the galaxy, reaching even the farthest corners of the known universe. The Zilmar, once considered an invincible force, were now retreating in disarray. their ships scattered like leaves in a storm. The Galactic Council, still reeling from their loss, could not ignore the undeniable truth that humanity was not just another species. They were a force to be reckoned with. Captain Elijah Walker stood aboard Horizon, staring out into the endless void of space. The bright lights of nearby stars flickered, and the occasional flash of distant explosions reminded him of the chaos that had been unleashed. But Walker remained calm, his eyes focused on the task ahead. The human fleet had gained a foothold, but they could not stop now. The victory over the Zilmar was only the beginning. There were still enemies to face, still threats to eliminate. Humanity's destiny was unfolding, and there would be no room for hesitation. "All ships are in position, Captain," the communications officer announced, snapping Walker out of his thoughts. "Good," Walker replied, his voice as steady as ever. "Prepare for the next phase." The next target on their list was the heart of the Galactic Council's military command, a massive space station located at the center of the Zilmar sector. It was heavily fortified, a symbol of the Council's power. Taking it down would send an unmistakable message to the galaxy. Humanity would not stop until they had reshaped the order of the universe. As the fleet made its way toward the station, the mood on Horizon grew tense. The crew had experienced victory, but they knew what awaited them now. This would be the most dangerous mission they had undertaken so far. The Zilmar had regrouped and were now prepared to make a last stand. The space station was surrounded by the remnants of their forces, and they would fight to the bitter end to protect their stronghold. The human fleet arrived at the station's outskirts. Its presence felt like a storm on the horizon. The Zilmar sensors had already detected them, and soon the first rounds of fire began to light up the darkness of space. The battle had begun. Walker's face tightened as the first wave of enemy fire struck Horizon's shields. They held, but it was clear that the Zilmar had no intention of making this easy. Their ships were armed to the teeth, their firepower unmatched by anything humanity had encountered so far. But the human fleet was undeterred. They had tasted victory, and now they were fighting with a renewed sense of purpose. "Return fire," Walker commanded, his voice cold and resolute. Immediately, the Horizon and its fleet began to fire back, their weapons lighting up the void. Lasers and plasma bolts streaked through space, striking Zilmar ships with brutal precision. The Zilmar retaliated, but humanity's tactics were too unpredictable, too relentless. The Deathworlders, with their unmatched ferocity, boarded enemy ships once again, using their overwhelming strength and combat prowess to cut through the Zilmar's defenses. The space station, once thought to be impregnable, was now under attack. Waves of fire rained down upon it as human ships swarmed around, picking off Zilmar defenses one by one. The Zilmar fought valiantly, but they were outmatched. The human fleet had a singular goal: to annihilate the enemy, to crush the Council's last bastion of power and claim the stars for themselves. "This is it," Walker muttered to himself as the battle raged on. "This is what we've been fighting for." Minutes turned into hours as the fighting intensified. The Zilmar station was surrounded, its hull buckling under the weight of humanity's fury. The human fleet's relentless assault continued, their weapons' precision targeting weak points in the station's defenses. Zilmar ships continued to fall, one after another, as humanity's forces pressed on without mercy. Then the moment they had been waiting for arrived. A massive explosion erupted from the heart of the Zilmar station, the result of a devastating strike from the Horizon's weapons. The station's core had been breached, and it began to break apart, pieces of its structure drifting into the void. The human fleet had done it. They had struck the final blow to the heart of the Galactic Council's power. Walker stood at the command center, watching the destruction unfold on the view screen. The battle was over. The Council's military might had been shattered. The Zilmar, the most powerful faction in the galaxy, had been defeated, and their once unbreakable stronghold had fallen. But the victory was bittersweet. The cost had been high. Many lives had been lost in the battle, and humanity was far from finished. As the fleet regrouped, Walker couldn't help but feel the weight of what was still to come. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the forefront of this transformation. But this victory, as monumental as it was only the beginning. There were still more battles to be fought, more enemies to crush, and more worlds to conquer. Humanity had proven its power, but the war was far from over. The aftermath. Humanity's place in the galaxy. The galaxy was forever changed. The once mighty Zilmar had fallen, their stronghold reduced to cosmic debris. The aftermath of the battle left a deep silence in its wake. Humanity had proven its might, and the rest of the galaxy could no longer ignore the undeniable truth. Earth's Deathworlders were not to be underestimated. Captain Elijah Walker stood on the bridge of the horizon, looking at the remains of the Zilmar space station. The crew was still recovering from the brutal conflict, their faces showing signs of exhaustion, but also of pride. They had won, but at what cost? The damage to their fleet was significant, and the loss of many soldiers weighed heavily on Walker's mind. The once vibrant galaxy now felt like a cold and distant place. The Zilmar may have been defeated, but they were only one part of a much larger web of powers and alliances. The Galactic Council's collapse was just the beginning. Walker knew that there would be more challenges ahead, challenges that would test humanity's resolve like never before. "Captain," Lieutenant Carter spoke up, breaking Walker's reverie. "The Council's communications network is down. We've been trying to contact the other factions, but no one is responding." Walker nodded grimly. He had anticipated this. The fall of the Zilmar was a seismic event, but it had thrown the entire galaxy into disarray. The other species would be watching closely, unsure of what the humans' next move would be. "It's only a matter of time before someone else steps in to fill the power vacuum," Carter continued. "The Council's allies might be regrouping, planning their next move." Walker's mind raced. The war wasn't over. The victory over the Zilmar was important, but the real test had just begun. Humanity had made a powerful statement, but the true scope of the galaxy's politics was still unknown. The balance of power had shifted, but who would seize control next? "I'll have to make a report to the High Command," Walker replied. "Prepare the fleet for further orders. We're not done yet." As Carter moved to relay the command, Walker's thoughts turned inward. The human fleet had shown its might, but it wasn't just about brute force. It was about adaptability, innovation, and the strength of humanity's spirit. The Zilmar had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. The horizon was more than just a ship, it was a symbol. It represented everything that humanity stood for: resilience, unity, and an unwavering belief in their own power. The fight was far from over, but humanity had proven that it could not only hold its own but thrive. As the fleet began to regroup and head toward their next objective, Walker glanced once more at the shattered remains of the Zilmar space station. The war was not yet won, but humanity had made its mark. The galaxy was theirs to shape. For the first time in a long while, humanity was no longer the underdog. The tables had turned. The Deathworlders had shown their true power, and no one would ever forget it.